Okay, so um, the book itself, Let's Get Real, the title itself, What People of Color Can't Say and Whites Won't Ask. It's a fairly provocative title, but at the same time, I think it's true. I think that there's a great deal that we don't talk about, as particularly with people of color, without paying a price. And I think that for many times for white folks, it's the fear of what we just might say, a fear that perhaps if we were to tell the truth, many things might take place. It might be that they're responsible, that what they might have to do about it, and also along with that is having to change. And so what my hope of the book is that it will not only dispel the fear that we have that if we bring this subject up, that everyone will be devastated and wounded, but actually I think it's the only way that we can actually heal, that if we don't talk about it, about what's not working, we'll never be able to repair some of the wounds and devastation that we've had in this country, historically, politically, and socially. I also think that unless we have models for this conversation to happen from our political leaders, our leaders at our workplaces, is that we'll always be afraid of this. And so part of this book is about actually breaking the silence. That I really think that if actual persons began talking about this issue, everyday people of all different ethnicities, of white, people of color, that what we'll really find out, perhaps underneath all of this, is that not that we have a whole lot in common, but that actually our differences are something to be embraced and to be honored and are useful in the workplace. And that we're not to be, that just looking at what we have in common is wonderful, but I think that it's a sense, still this continuous fear that we have that our differences will separate us, and we won't know what to do if we're all different. And I think that's one of the great myths, is that actually really it's our differences that enhances our relationships. It's our need, still our need, to really make good use of our differences. That I think that what I bring in as a Chinese man is really helpful to this country, that it's not a detriment and won't pull it apart. But actually I think that what I have to bring is very useful, very practical, and will enhance the resources and perceptions of this country. And I think that that's exactly what this book is all about, is really about let's get real. Let's really get around all these celebrations about foods and clothing and holidays. Let's work on having a relationship. And also, like all good relationships, there will be conflict. There'll be times when we'll hurt each other. I mean, why would we not expect less, given we've had 500 years of don't ask, don't tell? And so I think that like all good relationships, we'll have differences, there'll be difficulties, but our work is to whether or not we'll decide to stay in the room, to engage each other, to ask questions, to be curious, to be moved by each other's stories, and also to ask perhaps a very pertinent question. What part am I responsible in hurting other people? What part can I play in changing? What part can I do in rectifying a situation where people get hurt or dishonored or disrespected? And to me, that's exactly what relationships are like. And I think they take time. But we have to take the time in this country. I think we get so preoccupied that we just won't have enough time to have this dialogue, and that it will just take on forever. And I think that the truth of it really is that we keep having lawsuits and people leaving, and we do this silly thing called, well, I'll just respect, or let's just agree to have differences. And really everybody knows what that's about. And that is, I can hardly wait to get out of the room and we'll probably never talk again. And so I think the hard work and the most important work that we can do in our country is to really stay in the room, have this dialogue, get to know each other, and be able to accept that, in fact, we do have differences, and that's a beautiful thing. I think Virginia Woolf put it very well. She said we all have differences, but it's really the value that we put on those differences that makes all the difference.